And we've all noticed in the last week or so the amount of scams cyber-wise around in our world. So today we've brought together a really amazing panel of speakers who will be able to cover all different aspects of the cyber world for you. My name is Jude McCarry. I'm the CEO for SBRC. I keep thinking everybody must know me by now by the amount of times we've done this. So today we have Kieran Martin, the CEO of NCSC. We have David Forbash, the chair of the National Cyber Resiliency Advisory Board with Scottish Government. We have Declan Doyle, our amazing ethical hacker. Kirsty Steele from Scottish Government, who is an amazing woman in cyber. So welcome to the panel, and it's great to see the diversity coming along in cyber as well. And we've also got Chief Inspector Scott Tees from Police Scotland to give you an overview of what the police and stuff are doing around cyber. So I also want to introduce my co-host who's with me in all of these webinars, Paul Atkinson.
Thanks, Jude. It's fair to say I'll use the word unprecedented for about the 10,000th time. We're living in unprecedented times with the business impact and extensive home and remote working, massively increasing the level of cyber resilience that we need, as never before, really. And that's today's key focus. We've got, as Jude said, some of the top experts in their fields speaking today. I think things are likely to get worse before they get better. We will come out the other side, and we need our businesses to survive and be able to thrive again in the post-COVID world, where I'm pretty sure remote and home working will be the norm rather than the exception. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Atkinson, founder of Part Equity, which is an Edinburgh-based venture capital business. Cyber happens to be one of the areas we do invest in. I also chair a 150-man FTE professional service and recruitment business, Taranata Group. I chair Converge Challenge, which is the competition for all the best university spin-outs. And also chair Clark Communications, which is a PR and comms company that's been helping to support some of Jude's activity around this programme. I mean, certainly from a power perspective, we're definitely open for business. Although we expect quite a lot of difficulties and it to be a long haul, we're certainly expecting some opportunities to be created by the current crisis, particularly in areas like cyber. As Jude said, today's seminar is the fourth in the series, with our industry colleagues providing insights and intelligence on the COVID impact of cyber resilience. I'll just pass back to Jude to introduce our speakers. Over to you, Jude.
First up is Mr. Kieran Martin from NCSC, the CEO of NCSC and also a fellow countryman of mine. So over to you, Kieran.
Thanks very much, Jude. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's as well as can be. So as Jude and Paul have said, I'm Kieran Martin. I run the National Cybersecurity Centre based in London, a UK-wide body, but we've got very good links with all parts of Scottish society, government, industry and so forth, and a very long established and productive relationship with the SBRC. So real pleasure to be able to do this. I'm not going to take up too much time because I know Paul and Declan and others will want to go in, and David will want to go into much more detail. So I just wanted to say three things to set the tone around, what sort of tone are we setting UK-wide around cybersecurity in this current crisis, and make 3 points, largely aimed at organisational leaders. I know others will go on to more individual-based guidance and more specific things, but this is really geared at people trying to keep organisations running, whether that's in the public or private sectors at this very difficult time. The first thing I want to say is I think people should have a positive narrative around technology and a positive feeling around technology. There's an awful lot of things to worry about at the minute, but technology is one of the few things allowing most of us to maintain some sort of semblance of normality and normal activity in our personal and professional lives. It is a good thing. Think about this pandemic in even the 80s or 90s. Think about what life would have been like. Think about the difficulty government would have had communicating and mobilising society at pace. But also for those of us, and I head a 1,000 strong organisation in 3 different locations with people based internationally as well. Think about how difficult it would have been to maintain even the basic semblance of functionality of the organisation without technology. So the first point I would want to say is that technology is a positive force in this crisis. There are risks to manage. Those risks change. The laws of science don't change. The laws of human behavior don't change, but some aspects of the risk do change. But I think we should be setting a positive and empowering narrative around technology for our people. And then that brings me to the second thing, which is that we've been at this for a few weeks now. We can all debate what the starting point was of day zero of this sort of crisis and the shift to large-scale lockdown and migration to home working. But we have enough observable data to draw some conclusions. And again, I want to strike that realistic and fairly positive tone about what we're seeing. We have, as a population, as I've said already, enough to worry about without terrifying people about technology. So, are there more COVID-themed cyber scams and attacks related to the current crisis? Yes, of course, there are. I'll come on to those in a minute. What is my professional objective view as the head of the UK's National Technical Authority on levels of overall cybercrime? They're stable. They're different, but in aggregate terms, and I'm not downplaying the scale of the threat, it keeps me in a job permanently, it keeps Declan in a job. There is a lot to be worried about out there, but has there been an exponential growth in cybercrime as a result of this crisis overall, a net change in the overall strategic threat to our societies, economies and well-being? No, there hasn't. It was a significant societal risk and economic risk in January of this year. It is a significant societal and economic and strategic risk in April. The way it manifests is different, but overall it is no higher, nor is it significantly lower, I should say. But there will be people, and every Sunday, particularly because it's a nice weekend feature when there's more space in the newspapers, it's full of slightly scary stories about the risks and so forth of the new ways of working and so forth. And there are some, we can manage them, and that's the purpose of the seminar. But there's no absolute reason to panic. What are we seeing at the NCSC? Well, 6 months ago, when no one had heard of COVID-19, how many COVID-19 scams were there? There weren't any. Now it is by far the most significant themed scam that we're seeing. It's overtaken the classics of tax refund and the Driver Vehicle Licensing Authority, which are two, regular chart toppers. COVID-19 themed scams are now higher. But at the same time, the overall level of those attacks are the same. It's just been a displacement. So we need to tell people about the sort of things to watch out for. Obviously, government brands, because there's so many people, more people paying attention to what the government is saying now than we're used to normally. We're having to make sure that people know how to make informed decisions about what is likely to be a genuine communication from the government and what isn't. We have to make sure that people know what sort of things companies are likely to ask them for. And if you get random emails asking you to reset your Zoom password, as various of them government are getting, that's likely not to be genuine and things like that. There are all sorts of things. But overall, this is no greater a strategic threat than hitherto. So then the final point, as I say, I'm not really going to address many of my remarks towards individuals as private citizens. I'm going to talk to organizational leaders. I think the one thing to be aware of in terms of managing risk is that as you're trying to manage something like cybersecurity risk, sudden disruption to your way of working isn't very helpful in general. When we're giving advice to people about how to build up secure systems for organizations, we try to say, look, get a nice integrated system with somebody you trust, with verifiable, build a relationship with your provider, hire people who know what they're talking about, who can read the published, transparent stuff that major providers talk about the way they do security and so forth. Don't have sudden disruptive additions to your network suite. Integrate apps properly in terms of the identity management of your network and all the rest of it and so forth. And a lot of that can go out the window when there's a large scale migration to home working. People buy devices in bulk in fairly short order. We all start using new apps in fairly short order. The capacity of remote networks, the traffic on it doubles, quadruples, quintuples, whatever it does. And there are risks around that to manage. So how do we go about doing that? I would say two things, one sort of philosophical and one practical. The philosophical thing is that cybersecurity remains about risk, and risk judgments do change. So in the past week, I've signed off things, you'll have read about some of them. I've signed off things at government level that I wouldn't have signed off 2 months ago, and I will not hopefully sign up in a year's time. And what I mean by that is that, there are if you take the government's response to the COVID pandemic itself, a lot of it is about how to communicate both within government, communicate to the public. So essentially it's unclassified, but the urgency to communicate is paramount. So I will say that it's fine to communicate unclassified stuff at speed in ways that we would normally not do sensitive government business. Apply the same thing to businesses, to organisations. There will be exceptional challenges to each and every person's organisation in terms of keeping it running that you wouldn't have thought of 6 months ago. That changes the risk dynamic. The risk of not communicating, the risk of not doing something can be greater than the security risk associated with that, at least on a temporary basis. But then there are some practical things to think about. So, and again, not all of these will be relevant to everybody, but I hope something is relevant to at least everyone in this. So I would invite organisational leaders in particular to look at ncsc.gov.uk, where we issued pretty much on the first day after the Prime Minister said, please stay at home if you can, a few weeks ago, we issued guidance on remote working. And some of the things for organisational leaders, which I know colleagues, further speakers will pick up on, are, think about if you're issuing a large number of new accounts and new accesses, how are you doing authentication? Can you do multi-factor authentication? Have you got a decent password policy that's neither too weak so it's guessable, or is it too strong and therefore it's not going to be usable and people are going to use workarounds? They're going to use personal devices rather than the devices you've issued them with because it's too hard to negotiate your company's security policies. Have you given them decent up-to-date devices? If you've gone back and bought lots of second-hand stuff or exhumed lots of stuff that you decommissioned a long time ago, well then they're not going to update automatically in terms of security updates. They're not going to do automatic backups. So you are storing up problems for yourselves, because what you don't want to be doing is asking staff who are adjusting to difficult new ways of home working and are trying to manage families at home that they don't normally have in the workplace. If you're asking them to do lots of complicated things like do a backup every night and be responsible for their own software updates, then you are asking for trouble. So try and make those automatic. Are you using VPN? Have you got sensible removable media policies and so forth? And if you are giving people greater empowered delegated freedom to manage their own sort of IT, either using their own devices, buying new devices and so on, which many of us are, and we've done a little bit of it, are you giving them sensible guidance in terms of how to do that? And the final point I would make is about the culture. There may be organisations that will have to deal with incidents they wouldn't normally have had to deal with because of the move to home working. To give you just a really basic illustration, what if one of your staff do fall for one of these COVID-related scams on your network and they report it into you that they've clicked on a link, they've disclosed the password that they normally use for the network, and on reflection, they probably ought not to have done that. I think the tone that all of us as employers and leaders set in that sort of situation is really, really important, because they've done the right thing. They're under a huge amount of pressure. Work is taking on new forms. They're worried they may be caring for vulnerable and sick people. And if we start having a punitive attitude towards them for making a basic mistake that any of us could have made in ways of working that we're not doing, then we will disincentivize what we need, which is good reporting of these things so we can manage it. So I think there is something about that culture. It's not a bad thing to report that you've made a mistake. It's not a bad thing to report that you're having difficulties operating safely online. We need to have capacity at the other end to deal with these things, both technical and behavioral. We need to have a supportive culture for people to be able to work safely online. So those are my 3 points. Embrace technology. Overall levels of crime, of cyber attack, aren't increasing, but there are some COVID specific stuff. And organizational leaders need to just try to manage through good basic practice this move to mass home working. I hope that was useful, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Next we have David Forbat.
Thank you, Jude. Well, Kieran's already talked a bit about the shift in the themes being used for phishing by organised crime. And of course, COVID-19 is now dominating a lot of the lures they're using. And Declan will talk a bit more about this later on. But when you link that to a move towards remote working, it does place a priority in some of the controls we provide around email and web security, and also how we support those home workers as well. But to pick up on Kieran's point, fundamentally, good cyber hygiene remains the same as ever was. The cyber essentials are just as key as ever. firewalls, secure settings for device and software, but also cloud services, control who has access to data, protect yourself from viruses and malware, and keep your devices and software up to date. That hasn't changed. But we also need to be enabling new ways of working. And that means providing people with the technology they need to work securely and being pragmatic about it. And if we aren't flexible and we don't take up that challenge, then people are going to work around a lot of our security restrictions and blockers. And that will leave us in the worst place. So we've got a quick bit coming up about Zoom as a conference platform, for instance. A lot of people are using it. It's a very effective platform, and it can be very secure if it's used properly. So Kieran's also talked about working from home securely. So there's a couple of points for me. Maintaining email and web security controls are key for me. There is a heightened risk in this fear, uncertainty, and doubt around COVID-19, or people accidentally clicking on those COVID-themed phishing lures as well. So the volume of organized crime may be the same, it may be repurposed to COVID-19, but the chances of people being lured into clicking on those clickbait is higher just now. So there's some technical tips for me around email and web security, which need to complement, for me, the core, which is just education and awareness of home workers on the nature of the threat and good security practices. But some technical measures. Think about whether you should start blocking access to uncategorized websites. We often just block known bad websites. But at the moment, people are in a position where they do have access to their own personal IT. So having some degree of separation in their mind between work IT and personal IT, where that's possible, is worth doing, and some disciplines around that as well. You can also use protected DNS services. Quad 9, offered by the Global Cyber Alliance, is a great DNS server. It'll do a lot of the blocking and filtering of malicious sites for you as well. And that's a free service, so well worth looking into, very easy to configure and use. And my other thing with this is don't do anything that's highly disruptive in terms of security in the middle of this just now. You need to be practical advice, build it incrementally, and then you can improve your security as things settle down and people become comfortable. The simple things. So flag emails that are external to your organization. You can do it using rules in Office 365 or Outlook. It makes it easier for people to take that extra second just to say, is this real or not? And maybe even think about how you simplify reporting of spam, because people sometimes can actually be your best asset in flagging things that look strange, different, or malicious. So you can get a very simple report message add in for Outlook, which makes it really easy with one click to report those phishing emails to yourself, or security teams, or to Microsoft, or both. And Kieran's already mentioned the importance of two-factor authentication, certainly for cloud access like Office 365. So if you go onto the NCSC website, you'll find some great guidance on secure home working. So a shameless plug for Kieran and his team, who've done some great work in getting that guidance out. So thank you for that. So what I'm going to do for the second bit is look a bit more broadly at some of the cyber challenges we face, not just the home working piece. So we've all had to provision remote working infrastructure very, very quickly just now. VPNs, virtual desktops. We do need to think a little bit about the failure modes for that and whether we need a little bit more redundancy in those service and access routes, because they are the core channel into our businesses just now. So if you lose one of your VPN gateways, is there a fallback? Can it be switched over easily? Very simple stuff. We're also really focusing on managing servers and endpoints as well. So making sure they are still being patched and automating as much of that as we can, and making sure those critical security patches do still make it through to the endpoints. Because one of my nightmare scenarios is we end up with a large-scale ransomware attack, not so much on our corporate systems, but across all the laptops that we've deployed for remote workers. Those will be hard to fix quickly with that. Think about things like disk encryption, limiting local printing, and particularly disabling USB ports as well, because people have very little requirement now for USB media to move around if they're using those laptops in the home environment. So do think about restricting that. And if you're using bring your own device, then there's plenty of mobile device management solutions, obviously, you can apply. Be careful about how you do that. Don't disrupt people's home working model, but also make sure that their personal devices are regularly taking the security updates, because I worry about windows of opportunity for organized crime to exploit the vulnerabilities in the infrastructure they're using. So covered some of that. So I'm going to leave you with some other broader points now. A key part of your security is your security operations team as well. They're monitoring your systems for unusual or malicious behavior. As we relax some of the protective controls to allow people work from home, you do need to think about the detection and monitoring piece. And you know, those are also key workers as well. So there's a very practical point. If you're in a key industry or an essential service, make sure that your key workers, data center, security teams, key IT operations, all have a get out of jail letter that just says, you're a key worker, you really need to be able to support this firm. And that's something they can show to police if they're questioned during the increasingly strict lockdown regime. It's very practical advice just now, because we are already seeing data center workers being stopped and questioned by police when they're heading to work as well. So then there's a couple of last points for me. Fraud controls. It's not all about cyber. Sometimes there's some very, very simple fraud controls that are worth thinking about just now. And one of those for me is we're seeing a lot of chief executive officer business email compromise frauds running just now. All of them, of course, COVID-19 themed. And a lot of firms are making emergency and unconventional payments just now, as we all struggle to work through how we deal with COVID-19. So your finance teams are going to be under a lot of pressure. So think about how they confirm that those requests for a financial transfer or a new mandate or a new supplier setup are actually real. So a passcode they can be provided with, an SMS text exchange with the person who's requesting that emergency payment. It's a very simple extra check, but it will go a long way to dealing with the prevalence of CEO and business email compromise frauds. So 2 last points for me. Third-party risk, please talk to your managed service providers. They're all under pressure as well. They're having their business models disrupted. They're having issues with key personnel being absent just now. They're having problems sometimes in moving to remote working models. It's worth understanding how they're dealing with the crisis and being confident the security controls they're running are still in place and meet what you require as a client or customer. And if you do have an incident, just make sure you know who to speak to in those managed service providers. It's that simple thing of making sure your business continuity plans have the right points of contact and you understand who is really critical to your business. And that's the last theme for me. So if you look at ransomware just now, it seems like a distant memory. All of this being displaced with COVID-19 just now. But the thing is, I really, really don't want us to find ourselves with a ransomware incident in the middle of struggling with COVID-19 and remote working. So the basics of dealing with ransomware are still as valid as ever. You know, the backups, test them, but maybe also think about archive copies. So what's the core you really need to store offline or in an alternative backup? There might be your Active Directory, it might be your key financial records, it might be your supplier database, your employee databases. That set of key records is worth making sure you have separate copies of, and you've secured and encrypted those as well. It's just an extra caution for me. And if you do have a ransomware incident, you are probably going to see disruption to your main IT environment. Question for me then is, how do you run that crisis? Do you have an alternative collaboration or conferencing platform you can easily get access to if you lose part of your IT infrastructure, so you can still manage the recovery as well? And be very, very clear on what the core of your business is that you're trying to recover. So for me, cybercrime hasn't gone away. It's morphed and changed just now. But in the middle of us dealing with COVID-19 and being very dependent on remote working infrastructure in a way that we just weren't previously, the impact of those cybercrime incidents can be larger. And we do need to be a little bit cautious around that. So focus on what matters to your business, but most of all, support your people. Make it easy for them to work safely and securely. They're your strongest asset and absolutely key to your survival and recovery in the middle of this. So that's me, Jude.
Okay, before I hand over to Declan, Doyle as well. We do have a member on the panel as well, Matt Phillip, who I forgot to introduce. And Matt is from Shepherd and Wedderburn. He's not actually going to speak today, but if anybody's got any legal questions, you can ask them on the Q&A session. He's happy to look at those coming forward and answer those, or even if there's Q&A at the end as well around the legal implications on cyber and COVID. Next we have Declan, our amazing ethical hacker.
Thanks, Jude. Let me just see if I can share this screen here. Is that working for everyone? Yeah, okay. So, hi everyone. As Jude said, my name's Declan. I am an ethical hacker working with the SBRC, and today I want to show you just what I've been seeing over the past few weeks. I've kind of been keeping my ear to the ground and just having a look and seeing what's making the rounds in terms of phishing and scams and things like that. And unfortunately, this is a screen grab from Action Fraud. Unfortunately, we are seeing a huge spike in the amount of phishing emails going out related to, or just in general, phishing emails going out. Obviously related to the coronavirus and COVID-19. So there are a lot going about, and you know, with this virus, there are a lot more attack vectors that hackers can use. So I'm just going to walk through what I've seen. So the first, we've seen a lot of financial aid phishing emails. So obviously with the government announcing various packages and schemes to help everyone get through this whilst they're working from home, they've announced a lot of these financial schemes, and people are kind of jumping on that. So you know, claiming that there's kind of one-time click here to receive your emergency tax rebate or emergency payment. These are always fake. The government have said that they will not contact you in this regard to ask you to click a link to receive any sort of financial aid. As always, it's best just to go direct to the government website to inquire about anything like this, and just be aware that don't click any of these links that are coming from what appears to be government websites. As well, we're seeing a lot of kind of fake scams around testing kits. So here's a website that's recently been set up around a raffle to give away a free testing kit. You know, with any kind of online raffle, usually if you're not paying for a ticket, you're paying in some form, whether it's giving up data or things like that. So just advise and caution here that we have seen a lot of new websites being set up with fake meanings behind them. So for example, this raffle that we've seen. Also, the government have said that that when it comes to testing kits, the official channels will be Boots and Amazon for distribution. So any sort of website claiming to have these testing kits, as of now, will be fake unless the government kind of announces that we're seeing new channels for distribution. Again, we're seeing a lot of fake products being put on sale, hand sanitizer, surgical masks, protective equipment, all of that. Just be wary when it comes to things like that, particularly if someone is reaching out to you through email. I mean, these things are in very, very high demand and very short supply right now. So it's very unlikely that someone's going to be contacting you directly saying that they can offer you very cheap masks and protective equipment and things like that. Again, with information coming from various sources, there's a lot of false and fake information being spread around, particularly people impersonating the WHO, the World Health Organization. It's gone so far as the WHO have had to make a statement on cybersecurity. So they have said that their official website is who.int. anything else is not them, so a .org or a .com, things like that. That's not their website. So they've said that for the most up-to-date and reliable information from them is just to go direct to their website. They're not emailing people with updates and things like that. And then just on a note, when it comes to fake news, false information, things like that, just be aware of the sources you're getting. We're seeing a lot of kind of mass hysteria of spreading through various means like Facebook and WhatsApp group, things like that. You know, if someone says they've heard that, you know, lockdown measures are going to be stricter because they heard it from, you know, their brother's neighbour's friend who is working for the military or something like that, you know, just double check where these this pieces of information are coming from, check to see if it's been reported anywhere else, things like that. We're also seeing, unfortunately, a lot of fake charities soliciting donations, trying to scam people out of money. So this is a screenshot from another website that I've seen, just soliciting donations. This has been found to be fraudulent, and unfortunately people have fallen for this. If you do want to make a charitable donation, the WHO on their website has listed an official page for donations. Anyone emailing you asking for donations, I would advise caution against that. These websites are being taken down, but it is difficult because as one gets taken down, 5 more pop up. And I think I'll touch on domain names later on, but we've seen a huge spike in the amount of domain names being registered with either the word coronavirus or COVID-19 or things like that in the title. So there's a huge spike in that. And as well, Zoom. So Zoom has risen in popularity over the past few weeks because of the nature of the platform, an easy way to host conferencing, video conferencing. People are tuned on to this, and we've seen, I think one domain name registrar released figures saying that around 1,000 new domain names, including the word Zoom, have been registered in the past few weeks. So we're seeing a huge spike in this. What I would advise when it comes to Zoom is if you are receiving a Zoom link, make sure you know the person it's coming from and you're expecting it. Make sure it's legitimate, things like that. As well, if you are using Zoom, as Kieran was talking about, the government are now using Zoom. We need to be aware that if you are receiving emails asking to reset your Zoom password, you know, just make sure it's coming from them. Things like that. Just advising caution around that. We've also seen some text scams now. They've kind of become more popular because unfortunately in the UK we don't have an emergency alert system. You might have seen some pictures of things like that in the US and various other countries that suffer from natural disasters a lot more frequently than we do. The government can kind of issue a notification to everyone's phone that'll provide information on what to do and things like that. We don't have that here, so the government decided to effectively text everyone, just reminding them where to go to find information on the coronavirus and the NHS website. This has resulted in a rise in texting scams because people are jumping onto the fact that now the government is texting you. So we have seen things like this where they're implementing the use of these texts to effectively say that you've left your home, you know, you're going to be fined, things like that. The government have said, the number 10 Downing Street briefing office said on Twitter that they have only sent one text, and the plan so far is to only send one text. So any other text you receive that seems to be from the government is in fact fake. They will let us know if they do send another official one, but I'd imagine given the kind of rate of these scams that are going about, it probably won't. Also as well, for those that are wondering, how did the government get my number? They didn't in fact send the text themselves, they just asked all of the phone carriers to send the text on their behalf. So that's how everyone got this text. But yeah, so they have said that no more texts should be coming from them. They've only sent the one, so anything else you receive pretending to be the government is fake. So just avoid those if you can. We've also unfortunately seen a lot of malware being spread around due to the coronavirus. We've seen a few old Trojans that were originally targeted at banks now circulating. These are being stored in Word documents. What's happening is a phishing email will be sent, maybe asking, saying you've been infected with, or you've been in contact with someone that's suspected to have been infected. Please fill out this form and send it to your GP or local doctor or things like that. You download the Word document, open it, and then it'll ask you, do you want to enable content? When you click this button, effectively what's happening is an enabling macros, so basically code that can be run by the Word document, and then this is installing the malicious piece of software. So if you ever do download a Word document or an Excel document or PowerPoint or things like that, and it does come up with that little button saying, do you want to enable content? It's always best to click no, because more often than not, you won't need macros on your document unless you've specifically been told by someone that you trust that you do need that. But most instances, you will not need that. Unfortunately, as well, with this Trojan, it is old, but it's not been found to be broken yet. So if it does it can, in some instances, act as ransomware and encrypt your files. We have seen in the past with older ransomwares that you can go online and find the decryption key so you can recover your files. Unfortunately, this isn't the case with this piece of malware. So again, advise and caution on that. Don't download any documents attached to emails unless you're certain you know where they've come from. We've also seen some Android apps on the Android App Store using the coronavirus to bump up their traffic. They'll put coronavirus in the title of their app, or maybe in some of the descriptions, just to increase the ranking when you search online for the app. What has happened as well is that means that there are malicious apps out there that are now using coronavirus in the title to try and get to the top of the charts. What I would advise when it comes to apps for your mobile phones and tablet devices is to only ever use the recommended app stores. So for Android, it does vary depending on the manufacturer, but I would say it's best to just go with the Google Play Store. And then for iPhones and Apple devices, it is the Apple App Store. I would definitely avoid trying to download any apps from out with those stores. We have also seen very recently some router hijacking. So mainly two specific brands, D-Link and Linksys. But what we have seen with this is these routers, they come with default passwords to log into the admin console. A lot of users don't change the default password for their router, and so hackers are guessing that people have not changed the default password, managing to log in, and then what they will do is hijack the router so that when you go to a website such as Facebook or Amazon, they can actually redirect you to a different website. They'll make it look like Amazon or Facebook, and then they have pop-ups that say, here is the Facebook recommended coronavirus information app, click here to download, and people will be downloading the apps, and in fact these apps can be malicious. So again, advising don't ever download an app unless it's if it's out with the recommended app store, so the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And again, it's really important that, particularly now that everyone is working from home, have you changed the default password on your home router? And if not, I would look into doing that as soon as you possibly can. So now just a few tips, tricks, and best practices to kind of stay ahead of this and try and mitigate as much risk as we can. So first of all, we've already briefly spoken about this, but it is really crucial now that you are working from home on your own devices to keep them up to date. Make sure you're doing updates when you can. They're free, relatively easy to do. I understand it might take a wee bit longer if you're on your home network and your internet speed isn't as fast as it could be in the office, but just give it some time, leave things running overnight if you have to, but just, yeah, stay up to date. Passwords and passphrases as well. It is really important that you are using longer passwords if you can, and ideally a passphrase. So what we mean by that is multiple words, maybe your favorite song lyric or something like that, just anything that can kind of increase the length of your passwords and your passphrase. It's also maybe a good time to look into password managers. They can help you a lot, can remember the passwords for you, so you'll need to remember the one long one. Again, it is a good idea to start using different passwords for different sites. Particularly now, there is an increased risk for one of your passwords to be hacked now that everyone is working from home. And also might be a good time to try and enable two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication if possible, as this can greatly increase your security standing and kind of make it more difficult to get hacked, or even just falling for a phishing scam. If your passwords get leaked, at least they won't have your two-factor device. It is definitely important as well to be backing up your data, even when at home. We have a recommended backup procedure, which we call the 3-2-1 rule. What we mean by this is 3 different copies of your data on 2 different storage mediums in 1 different location. So 3 copies on 2 different mediums. That means, 1 USB stick, maybe 1 external hard drive or something like in the cloud, and then 1 different location. So in the cloud, and that USB in your house, that's in a different location. So the 3-2-1 rule is what we'd recommend. And then phishing as well. As said, we've seen a huge increase in phishing emails and phishing scams. And so I think the best thing to do is just briefly show you how to read a URL properly. That's probably the best way to fight against this. So to do that, I'll very briefly use my student accommodation halls in my first year at uni, Parker House. So the address for this, I've kind of broken it down. You can see in the 3 different colours. In green we have Dundee, the city. In yellow, 15 Parker Street, the street, and then in blue, the actual specific address. URLs kind of work the same. So let's look at this. myaccount.google.com. So when it comes to URLs, you read them backwards. So first of all, you can get rid of anything beyond the slash, so that part isn't important when it comes to reading it, so you can just ignore that. So when you read it backwards, .com or .co.uk, .scot, things like that, that is similar to the kind of city address. Then what you want to do is look forward. So Google is like the street that you're on, and then anything before that is the specific part of the street. So you're reading it backwards. So an example of where this can come in handy is if we look also as well, is very important that we're using websites with HTTPS on them so that they are secure. So an example of where this comes in handy is this man is John Podesta. For those that don't know, he was the chair of Hillary Clinton's campaign, her presidential campaign, and they suffered a big hack. This was the phishing email that he had received. So if we look at the URL for this, you can see that if we read it backwards, if you read it forwards, it looks relatively legitimate. But if you read it backwards is the way you're supposed to, and we'll use the kind of color scheme there to help, you can see that the end part, the street, or the city, is .tk. So already it's an unusual ending. Then the actual domain name, so the actual street, following this example again that is on, is com-security settings page. And then in front of that, we've got Google. And then in front of that, again, we've got my account. So reading it from forward to end, it does look like it could be a relatively legitimate domain. But if you do it properly and read it from the back, you can see that it is in fact an illegitimate domain. So finally, we've just got some kind of call to arms for you guys to help us. So we, SBRC, have set up an email. If you do see any phishing emails or scams or things like that, if you could forward them on to this email address, report@sbrcentre.co.uk. This is going to help us identify the scams that are going about in Scotland and in the rest of the UK. We're trying to feed this into the Scottish Government so that they can be on top of things as well, working with Police Scotland with that as well. So yeah, if you could forward any phishing emails you get onto that, that would be brilliant. And then finally as well, we were talking about domains earlier. There is a group of hackers online that have identified a bunch of coronavirus domain names that are being used in phishing campaigns and scams. You can download, or you can get your network administrator to download this list and add it to the blacklist of domains. So if you do receive an email from one of these websites or you try to access it, it won't allow you. So that's a great way to defend against these sort of things. But that is it from me. Thank you very much, and I'll pass back to Jude.
Thanks, Declan. And now we've got Kirsty Steele from Scottish Government. Thank you.
Thanks, Jude. I'm just going to share my presentation next. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm Kirsty Steele. I work in the Cyber Resilience Unit in the Scottish Government. We are committed to helping Scotland's people, businesses and public sector improve their cyber resilience. That means we help them use technology securely and how to respond to and prevent cybercrime. In recent weeks, businesses have had to adapt to the current situation we find ourselves in. They're using technology in an effort to keep in touch with employees who are working from home. And the need for effective channels of communication is vital. So video conferencing has been around for a long time. Previously, it might have been something that you would only seen if you went into the boardroom. But it seems that only recently that Zoom and the others have had the spotlight. Growing numbers of people are using it to catch up with friends virtually indoors. You know, they're hosting quiz nights. I don't know if anybody's seen that last week, Matt Baker from The One Show was also working from home and managed to still present the show via video conference. But as I mentioned, this technology has been around for a while and it's probably longer than you think. The first picture phone appeared in 1964 at World Fair, and this was created by a telephone company called AT&T. And using the phone, callers in New York spoke to park visitors in Disneyland, allowing multiple people to be on the call at once. So you could really say it's Mickey Mouse technology. But with this technology comes risk, and that risk must be managed. So today I'm going to share with you some tips on how you can keep your video conferencing cyber safe. I will share some sensible steps that you can take when staff are using conference technology facilities. And these tips will work across all the apps and platforms, but since we're using Zoom today, I'm going to talk about how they work in Zoom. So let's start with setting up the virtual meetings. So this might sound obvious, but only send invites to people who you want at the meeting. So it's better to send it to people directly and not to a shared inbox or a generic email address like info@. You want to be able to check over the participant list. You know, ask your participants to use their real names when signing up for the meeting. No nicknames. This will make it easier for you to identify who's in the meeting. And just like you would in person, you can have a virtual waiting room before you start each meeting. Think of yourself as the club bouncer. You know, you can decide who's allowed to enter before you let them in. Sorry, Scott, if your name's not on the list, you're not getting in. Oh, and no trainers. But don't be afraid to ask each participant to verify themselves at the start of the meeting. This might be a simple hello, it might be showing an ID badge, especially if this can help if you've never met them before. But this will ensure that only trusted parties are listening. And if you're not sure, you can move everybody back to the waiting room and then admit people individually again. Now, consider using a passphrase to protect access to your meeting. So you can share this with participants directly before the meeting starts. Just try to avoid using easy guessable passwords. You know, follow the NCSC's password guidance and use a passphrase like 3 random words. And only use that password for that one meeting, because you don't want somebody trying to use that password again to sneak into any future meetings. And you can find out how to turn on the password feature on the Zoom Help Centre on their website. Now, for many of you, this is new surroundings to work from, but the same standard security practices should apply. Don't make a business call in public. You know, make sure you're not being overlooked or overheard when using these tools. This might be as simple as closing the door, shutting the windows, and wearing headphones. Can anyone else hear what you're discussing on this call? You know, maybe you live alone, but someone or something else might be listening. Let me give you a hint. Hey Alexa, play Stupid Love by Lady Gaga. Hey Google, what time is it? Apologies if I've set any of them off in your house. The always on feature in smart speakers could present a security risk. It could result in audio from your conferencing being uploaded to a cloud system. So it's best to turn the microphone off when you're working at home. Now, you can't control the security of your attendees, so be mindful of who your audience is. Tailor your content accordingly. Don't accidentally speak about the next client meeting that you're about to have when your competitor's in the meeting. Remember, only share information Remember, any information presented to external parties will result in that being uncontrolled. You don't know if they're recording the meeting. So for the content of your discussion, be mindful of what you're saying and only reveal what you see is necessary. What do people really need to know? Now, if you're a presenter during a conference call and you want to share a presentation or a document during the meeting, some software in the meeting, some meeting software makes this really easy to do. It's a simple drag and drop, but files should not be sent in this method. If there's a business need to send a file, you should use the standard methods of file transfer in advance of the meeting. Don't share personal or sensitive data, especially through the internal chat. If information is required at the meeting participants, make it available to them ahead of time, rather than sharing it through the conferencing system. And you should disable the file transfer feature to prevent any malicious software being shared. Now, if you're presenting from your screen, it might be an idea to have a quick cleanup of your desktop and applications first. Be careful what might be visible to attendees. Do you have a Skype message popping up over your screen? Were you previously working on a sensitive email or a document that you've still got open? Where possible, only present the application that you wish to share instead of your entire desktop. Online meeting software sometimes lets others allow them to take control over your computer. Again, it's probably not a good idea to use this feature. Turn it off. If you're in a meeting and you see that it's being recorded and you're not comfortable with what you're saying being recorded, just ask for it to be turned off. And upgrading from any free account software, you will get more advanced meeting controls, such as enabling and disabling recording. And at the end of the call, ensure that you've actively closed the meeting to disable screen sharing and when you're finished, and this will prevent any accidental sharing of your desktop activity. Now, it's been great to see all these organizations having these virtual morning tea breaks online. They're posting selfies of their team catching up. But think about what information that you're making public. It might be the names of those who work in your company, or it might be that your office is empty. Or it could be interpreted as everyone's distracted at 10 a.m. for their coffee break, so this is the perfect time to take down the website. And did you know that the meeting ID at the top of the Zoom calls can be looked up way after the meeting has finished? Does even the title of your meeting give away critical information? Now, with all that in mind, use the service for less sensitive conversations and use the service in a way that ensures that apps like Zoom cannot access other data held on your user's device. Review your app permissions and restrict it from accessing features on your device such as your calendar, contacts, camera and microphone, and so on. Now, cybersecurity threat is ever changing, so it's best to look at authoritative sources such as Police Scotland and the National Cyber Security Centre for the latest guidance. You know, they have a range of advice on different topics, from home working to spotting phishing emails and so on. And I'd like to finish with encouraging you to report any suspicious activity that you come across. You might report it directly to your IT provider, or indeed Police Scotland if you become a victim of cybercrime. But be vigilant, you know, don't open suspicious or unexpected email invitations and links. So hopefully these tips will help keep your virtual meetings a little bit more secure. And I'll hand back to Jude. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kirsty. Next we have Chief Inspector Scott Tees. Thank you.
Good morning, Jude. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak this morning. For those who don't know me, I'm Scott Tees. I'm the Police Scotland National Cyber Crime Prevention Lead. And what we do is we do the preventative work in relation to cybercrime. We work alongside our forensic investigators and other partners. What I want to do this morning is actually speak to you about the work we're doing, the framework we're involved in order to give you some reassurance in what we're doing and what we're actually, how we're approaching the current issue that we're all facing. Reassuringly, when we actually wrote the strategy a number of years back, what I wanted to do was make it person-focused, and never has it been so important in this day and age to actually focus on our people when it comes to cybercrime, with the remote working, etc. it's happening. So really that's beginning to pay dividends. But what I want to reassure you is, first and foremost, the frameworks we've got in place have been tried and tested over a number of years over different issues such as the WannaCry, etc. So there is a lot of joined up working ongoing, both with industry and various sectors. So I just want to first and foremost give you that reassurance. So what is that actual sort of framework we do? We have heard from a number of the speakers this morning and mentioned how we speak to one another, but I just want to give you sort of an insight to that. In relation to the global picture, we work with a lot of industry partners, but we also link in very closely and take the lead from the National Cyber Security Centre. You heard from Kieran this morning in the work we do. So we plug into the National Cyber Security Centre and along with the Scottish Government to understand the current threat and risk and what's actually going out there in the cyber landscape. From that, we actually work in the UK level with a lot of the regional organised crime units. This is all different areas in England and Wales, who we work together to share information, meet and actually discuss the cyber threats. This has been going on a number of years, and that framework in place has allowed us to continue that sharing of information at such times. Also, what we all do internally in Police Scotland is work with a number of departments and specialist areas to understand the threat and risk, what they're facing, what their actual intelligence is telling them, and we sort of translate that into our tweets and language with people to give them that early warning and awareness. We work with investigation teams, with financial investigation crime units, intelligence, but we also work at a local level. And the way we do it is we've got local web constables. That's officers in your community, your local community officers, officers who link in with schools. They pass the information to them. We've created a network whereby we're sharing the information, what the threat risk it's out there in the community, and those officers are into various communities, your business, etc., and updating what's going on and speak about different ways to actually prevent yourself from becoming a victim. We've got over 200 of these officers in the country, so there will be one in your area, and if you want to find out more, then please, you can speak to me offline after this. Also, we'll get designated cyber protect officers. These are officers who like directly in with business, with the Scottish Business Resilience Centre, and work in partnership in order to provide that information and that security and that sort of advice to businesses direct, face-to-face. So a lot of that work ongoing. Yes, we are restricted in relation to the movement of face-to-face work, but again, like every other organisation, taking full advantage of the online working platforms we've got here. But also areas we're working in order to gain information in the nationally is through areas such as the Cyber Security Information Sharing Partnership, UK Safer Internet Centre, business, industry, financial, We share all that through various platforms, through working with Scottish Government, through various meetings. So that is continuing, that has been established over a number of years, and never more so has it been required at such a time. So please be assured that that work is ongoing. But over and above that, we look at different areas and what the threat they've got specifically to the current climate. We're linking in with the National Health Service Fraud Department, and we're sharing information into the experiences they're finding through the coronavirus, but also what we're finding in order to get out to the 22 local authority fraud investigators and what they're finding out there. So we're sharing that information. There's a constant chat in order to keep us updated. Now, how are we actually sharing this? Well, as Kirsty previously mentioned there, we're going to our website, we're updating the information, the threat and risk gets out there. But also in my Twitter feeds, any information we get, we're sharing, we're sanitising it through the National Cyber Security Centre, Scottish Government, working with our partners in SBRC and other industry areas, getting that information, getting the most accurate information and sharing it out there. As Kirsty said, visit our Twitter, you'll see the information that's been put out there. Because ultimately what we're doing is there's a real sort of thirst for information. What we want to make sure is, first of all, is proportionate and accurate. What we have found is never more so before has there been a need to involve our people in your cyber security. David mentioned it beforehand, it's critical that we do get people on board, not necessarily your IT and your technicians, your everyday workers, because remember, we've went from one day working in the security of our office where the IT is a wraparound and secure, to giving someone a laptop and ask them to go and work at home. Not only do we find them the sort of emotions and it's unsettling to people, but all of a sudden you've got the issues with the coronavirus, but also all of a sudden working from home, which may be strange to people, take them out of their comfort zone. So there's all these different things, and what we're finding, that's the sort of thing, the unsettlement, the actual emotional impact on people, it allows the cyber criminals to target people, because people have got a real thirst for information. What's the threat and risk, not only physically for the virus, but also online? What is it I need to know? And once they want to get real thirst for that, with a mixture of everything that's taking place, their guard drops, and that's when they're getting caught. So we need to support the staff that's out there. I'll finish off with just some simple, what I would say, tips in relation to how we approach our strategy in the world. And first of all, I would ask people who's out there, particularly people who have got a staff working for them, but also with one another, don't overwhelm each other with information. Let's keep it short, sharp and basic. Go to official sites, the National Cyber Security Centre, Police Scotland website, SBRC are putting out a lot of information. Go to official sites. Do not get overwhelmed with information, because all of a sudden you've got this amount of information and you can't actually see what's accurate and what's not. Don't overwhelm. What we'd actually do as well is, if you've been out in information, put it in simple, easy to understand language. Because remember, we may understand it, but the people who are targeting and trying to support may not. And with 101 things going on in their mind, keep it simple for them. Make it simple, basic tips. That way, they feel more reassured. They understand there's people there for them, looking out for them, and they begin to understand what the threat and risk is. Keep it simple for them. Also, what I would say is make sure you support one another. And that way, it's either people who maybe not too sure working online, or people who just maybe feeling it's all getting a bit top of them. Speak to one another, because that way you can support. That way you can, in business as well, there's a lot of business network out there, support one another, because ultimately we all get through this by working together. Different official things to look at is webinars, things that's official and things that people would live in like the one today. So that sort of support should be out there. And one thing, what we'd ask is, the simple terminology I'm speaking about is, for example, if you say to your staff, we're trying to get them to not go online, as David quite rightly says, try and separate your work from your personal, and when you're online, put it in simple language. What you'd ask your staff is, if we treat, Police Scotland, we treat the cyber world as not another thing, but it's just another community, it's another town, it's another place we're visiting. So you'd ask your staff, if you were going to visit a new town, would you pack your staff information, financial details, a lot of basic staff details, all your client details into a bag, then decide to visit that town or community, in an area in that town or community, you're not sure who lives there. Is it safe there? Could someone steal my bag? I bring it from the virtual to the real world. If they say no, they wouldn't, then ask them, well, why would you do that online? Get them to think about where they're visiting, what they're taking with them to that site. Make it simple, make it easy to understand, get them to separate the work from their own personal life, and get them to slow down and just take time to actually think about what they're doing. To me, the best piece of advice, and I'm sorry for appear to be sort of repeating myself, is when you're dealing with your staff, remember all the different emotional impact that's happening with various things. Keep things simple, take away the jargon, clear, easy to understand language, and support them. Keep your staff safe. If you keep your staff safe, you will keep your organisation secure. Jude, that's myself there.
Okay, thank you very much. What an amazing panel, and everybody had so much information there that hopefully you all found really useful. David Verbat has been very busy answering all the Q&As there as they're coming in, so, and other people as well. So I don't think we've got anything else to cover on the call, and thank you very much for you all staying on. Just if you need any more information, if you can join up on the SBRC COVID LinkedIn page, and also join the SBRC, follow us on Twitter for all the information that we've got around the webinars. And also if there's anything else that we can give you around practical advice, we've got Declan, we've got Eamon Keane, who probably most of you know, and also the police as well that work with us. So thank you very much, everybody. Has any of the panel got anything else left to say that hasn't been covered?
Yeah, just to say, Jude, thanks for all the panel members for contributing. It's been another great session, and as you'll find all the sessions both on the SBRC website, but also on the LinkedIn profile. And please feel free to share with your colleagues and friends. It's there as a resource for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Jude, could I just add one quick thing? I'm just conscious of the fact that very business oriented today, which correctly it should be, but just to reassure people, we do work with education as well and trying to get packs out, because people will be worried about the young people at home.
Yeah, and we all will be, because they're all at home with us as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and see you next week. We've got a few more webinars. We've got one on leadership and people tomorrow morning, looking at the legal implications around furlough, around staff motivation, and also being more resilient as a leader yourself as well. So hopefully to see some of you. That's on Twitter, so you can join up on that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.